We were young men from the Navajo Nation. Many of us had never left our homes, the Dinbikea, our sacred land. We grew up speaking our language, Dinbizad. The United States government once sent us to boarding schools. They told us not to speak our language. They said it was not modern. They tried to make us forget our words and our ways. But we did not forget. Our language was a part of us, like the blood in our veins. We never imagined that this very language, the one they tried to take away, would one day become a powerful weapon for the same country. It was a strange turn of events, a path none of us could have predicted when we joined the Marine Corps. Our journey began with a simple desire to serve our country. The world was at war, and we were patriots. We were Americans, and we were Navajo. We saw the call to defend our land, and we answered it with pride. The Marine recruiters came to our lands, looking for young men who spoke both Navajo and English very well. At the time, we did not know why. They only told us it was for a special mission, a secret job that could help win the war. We were just boys, many of us only teenagers, leaving our families and our sheep herds behind. We stepped onto buses that took us far away from the red mesas and wide-open skies we knew so well, heading toward a future that was completely unknown to us. The training was harder than anything we had ever experienced. We went through the same tough boot camp as every other Marine. We learned to march, to shoot, to follow orders, and to survive in the toughest conditions. We became part of a brotherhood, a group of men who relied on each other completely. But after boot camp, our path was different. We were taken to a secret classroom at Camp Elliott in California. It was there that we finally learned our true mission. We were not just going to be soldiers, we were going to be communicators. We were going to use our sacred language to create a code that the enemy could never figure out. This new task was a great honor, but it also carried a heavy weight. We were the first group, the original 29 Navajo Code Talkers. It was our job to build this code from the ground up, using our old language to represent modern military terms. We had to memorize it all, every word and every letter. There could be no written books to look at in the field. The safety of our fellow Marines, the success of entire battles, would rest on our shoulders and in our minds. We understood how important our task was. We knew we had to succeed no matter the cost. Our language was no longer just a part of our culture, it was now a key to winning. In the Great War against Japan, messages were everything. The American military needed to send secret orders across the vast Pacific Ocean. They had to coordinate attacks between ships, planes, and soldiers on the ground. Commanders needed to tell their troops where to go, when to attack, and where the enemy was hiding. If these messages were not secret, the enemy could hear them. They could learn our plans, they could set traps and ambushes. Many American lives would be lost if our communications were not safe. The safety of every single soldier and sailor depended on keeping our plans hidden from the sharp ears of our skilled enemies. Before we came along, the military tried many different codes. They used complex machines to scramble their messages. But the Japanese were very smart. Their code breakers were some of the best in the world. They worked day and night to figure out the American codes. Too many times they succeeded. They would listen to our radio messages, and soon they would understand what we were saying. This was a very big problem. It was like playing a card game where your opponent can see all the cards in your hand. The Americans were losing brave men because their secrets were being found out. They needed something new, a code that was completely different from anything the Japanese had ever seen or heard. The idea to use a Native American language was brilliant. It came from a man named Philip Johnston. He was not a Navajo, but he grew up on our land as the son of a missionary. He spoke our language and understood how complex it was. He knew that very few people outside of the Navajo Nation could speak it. It had no written alphabet, and its grammar was very difficult for outsiders to learn. The sounds were unique, with different tones that could change the meaning of a word completely. Johnston convinced the Marine Corps that our language could be the perfect base for a code that couldn't be broken. It was a spoken language, passed down through generations, not written in books for enemies to study. The military leaders were desperate for a solution, so they agreed to give this unusual idea a try. They needed a code that was fast, accurate, and most importantly, completely safe. Machine codes were often slowed to encrypt and decrypt. A message could take hours to send, and in battle time is precious. A spoken code, however, could be sent almost instantly. A code talker could speak into a radio, and another code talker miles away could understand it right away. This speed would give our forces a huge advantage. They could react to changes on the battlefield in minutes, not hours. The hope was that our language, Din Bizad, would be the answer they were looking for. Our first task was to build the code itself. We started with the English alphabet. For each letter, we chose a Navajo word. For the letter A, we used the Navajo word for ant, which is wallachi. For B, we used shush, the word for bear. For C, we used moasi, the word for cat. We did this for all 26 letters, choosing words that were common to us and easy to remember. This way we could spell out any word that was not already in our special dictionary. This part of the code was for names, places, or specific terms that needed to be communicated with perfect accuracy. It was a simple idea, but it was just the beginning of our secret language of war. But spelling out every single word would be too slow. We needed a faster way to send common military messages. So we created a special dictionary of over 400 military terms. We gave these terms Navajo code words. A submarine became beshlo, which means ironfish. A battleship was lotso, or whale. A fighter plane was da-he-ti-he, the Navajo word for hummingbird. A bomber plane was jaysho, or buzzard. We had to be creative. For America, we used nehema, which means our mother. For Germany, we used beshbi-chahi, meaning iron hat, for the shape of their helmets. This dictionary was our most important tool, and we had to know it by heart. The code was difficult to learn, even for us. We spent 13 weeks in that classroom, practicing over and over. We would sit in pairs, sending and receiving messages until it became second nature. The instructors would try to trick us to make us make mistakes, but we were determined. We knew what was at stake. The beauty of the code was its layers. The enemy would first have to understand that they were hearing the Navajo language. Then, they would have to learn the language itself, which was nearly impossible. Even if they somehow managed that, they would still only hear words like iron fish or hummingbird. They would not understand that these were code words for military equipment. Our language was perfect for this job. The tones and sounds are very hard for people who are not native speakers to copy. A single word spoken with a different pitch can have a completely different meaning. This made it impossible for the enemy to copy our messages or understand them. When the Japanese first heard our messages, they were completely confused. They thought it might be some strange new code from another planet. They never guessed it was the language of the native people of America. They put their best experts on it, but they never broke it. Not a single message sent by a Navajo code talker was ever figured out by the enemy. Our language, once a source of shame in government schools, had become our nation's most secure secret. In battle, we were in the middle of the fighting. We were not sitting in safe rooms far from the front lines. We were Marines first. We carried our radios and our rifles through the jungles and onto the beaches of islands like Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. I was there at Iwo Jima. The noise of bombs and gunfire was everywhere. It was chaos. In the middle of it all, we had to stay calm. We had to send and receive messages clearly and quickly. Enemy machine gun nest on your right side. Send more ammunition to Hill 261. These messages saved lives. They allowed our commanders to move troops and direct airstrikes with precision, changing the way many battles went. Our job was dangerous. The enemy knew that the men with the radios were important. They made us targets. We always had a bodyguard, another Marine whose job was to protect us. But the truth is, his orders were also to protect the code. If we were about to be captured, he was supposed to kill us to prevent the secret from falling into enemy hands. We understood this. We knew the code was more important than our own lives. We worked in pairs, one sending messages while the other looked out for danger. We worked for days without sleep, our voices growing hoarse from shouting into the radio over the sounds of war. We sent thousands of messages, and every single one was delivered without error. When the war ended, we came home. But we could not speak about what we had done. Our mission was top secret. The military leaders thought there might be another war, and they wanted to be able to use our code again. So, we were sworn to silence. We could not tell our families, our friends, or our tribal elders about our true role in the war. For decades, we lived with this secret inside us. People would ask what we did, and we would just say we were Marines. No one knew that we had been a secret weapon, that our words had helped win the war in the Pacific. We returned to our lives on the reservation, working as farmers, ranchers, and laborers, carrying our silent honor with us. It was not until 1968 that the mission was made public. Only then could we begin to share our story. It took many more years for our contribution to be fully recognized. In 2001, the original 29 of us who created the code were given the Congressional Gold Medal, the nation's highest civilian honor. Our story is important today because it is a story of great patriotism. It shows how a unique culture and an ancient language can be a source of great strength. We were proud to serve our country using the very language that others had tried to get rid of. We proved that who we are, our heritage and our words, is something to be honored. Our story is a reminder that strength can be found in the most unexpected places.